Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for a roller coaster of romance. Season 29 of The Bachelor premieres Monday, January 27th, and this season's got some flavor to it. Citizens of Bachelor Nation will recognize this season's heartthrob as one of the fan favorites from Jen's season, Grant Ellis. But now he's looking to see if his wish of everlasting love will be granted. With his infectious laugh and athletic prowess, this goofball is set to charm a house full of hopeful hearts. From candlelit dinners to adrenaline-pumping dates, watch as this day trader navigates the twists and turns of finding love in a mansion filled with 25 of America's loveliest ladies. Will Grant find his perfect match or end up with a broken portfolio? Tune in for the most exciting season yet of The Bachelor, starting this Monday, January 27th at 8/7 Central on ABC and available to stream on Hulu.
This podcast is brought to you by eHarmony, the dating app to find someone you can be yourself with. Ever wondered if there's a better way to gauge your compatibility with other people on dating apps? Well, there is on eHarmony. Thanks to their compatibility quiz, you can see what makes you compatible with other members. On eHarmony, you're one step closer to finding someone you can be yourself with without having to pretend to be someone you're not. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up today.
Edit audio.
Hello, everyone. I'm Robin Hopkins, and this is Well Adjusting, where I talk to people about life stuff, but not in an NPR way. It's more like we're at the bar, having cocktails, getting into your business sort of way.
It's giving drunk NPR.
Oh, and producer Steph is here too.
Hello.
Today we chat, well, getting unstuck on goals and resolutions. Hey folks, Robin here. I am your friendly host of the podcast Well Adjusting, which is a podcast where we talk finances, the workplace, and self-help. But, we don't talk about it in this all serious, like you're getting scolded by your therapist for continuing to go out with that person that you know is not good for you. Instead, we get into your business like we've had, 5 to 15 cocktails. And me and producer Steph, we pick apart a problem to help folks see things a little differently, just to consider things for changes.
And hi, my name is Deanna, and I'm the host of Season of Stuck, a podcast about the all too human experience of feeling stuck. How and why we get stuck, what that feels like, how to learn and grow from it, and ultimately how to get unstuck and step into the next version of ourselves and our lives.
I mean, could there be a more perfect fit for our shows?
Oh, I have been counting down on the calendar until the moment that we got to have this conversation, because I don't drink. But still, my favorite way to have a conversation is like we've had 5 to 15 cocktails. So it just feels perfect.
Exactly. That's why I'm so thrilled that we're doing this today, because it's like when we were introduced, I was like, I love what you're doing. You didn't hate what we're doing. And I'm like, obviously, we got to do some kind of a collaboration. That's just got to happen.
Mm-hmm. And I am so excited because I have done collaborations. I've been on other people's podcasts. They've been on my podcast. But this is the first true collaboration where we're almost like merging our podcasts into one.
I know.
So I'm so excited. I think that this is going to be so fun. You said I don't hate your podcast. I want to correct that. I absolutely love your podcast. And the first time that I listened to it, I knew. I was like, this is a person that I want to talk to and take a bit of a deep dive into stuckness with. So yeah, just
we're
really excited to chat.
A podcast like a female bromance. I love it.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I think it is so important for everyone, but particularly for women, to support each other and lift each other up. So anytime I see a woman out in the world that is doing something cool, doing something that I connect with, doing something that I resonate with, I want to be sure to tell them because they deserve to know.
Right? It's like, I sometimes will stare at people. I'm like, I wonder if they know I just really like their outfit or something. And then I force myself to be like, and producer Steph, who unfortunately can't be here today because she's got the stomach flu that's going around. But producer Steph is so good at being like, I love your outfit. She's so good at that. And it's like, I think it's just a nice thing you can do for people is to tell them how great you think they are.
And it really just can completely brighten up someone's day, right? You don't know what they're experiencing. You don't know what they're going through. And a compliment to their outfit or the thing that they're creating or something that they said to you that really resonated and made you feel good, that could change the entire course of their day, of their week, of, their year. Who knows? So I try to be vocal about those things. And you, Robin, are doing very cool things.
before we start talking about stuck, because we're post New Year's, and I feel like this is the time when everybody's kind of like thrown away all their, New Year's resolutions, like you made it about 3 weeks and then like hell in a handbasket. Mm-hmm. But before we kind of like start to talk about that, I did want to say to you, like how does one become like a stuck expert, like a stuck spurt?
A stuck spurt. Oh, a stuck spurt. I am stealing that one and adding it to my title. So when it comes to my experience with stuck, it really comes from a personal place. So I am a person that has felt stuck a lot, like a lot. If there is a way or a place that you can imagine being stuck, chances are I have been there. I have been through addiction and recovery. Yeah. I have been through bad relationships, the wrong job, the wrong career path, not knowing who I am or who I want to be, like all of these experiences over the course of my life where I have hit this wall and felt like I didn't know how to move forward, or I didn't know what I wanted to move forward to even when I could. Yeah. And for years, the way that I experienced that was as very personal, right? Like that there was some sort of shortcoming or personal failing that was unique to me that kept leading me to these walls and these stuck points. Yeah. And I went through the majority of my life in that way. And then this past season of stuck that I experienced, my last major experience with stuckness, which was a couple of years ago, which had to do with my career and my business and my industry changing, I finally got to the point where I was like, I need to figure out what is going on and why I keep hitting these points. And B, I need to get this off my chest. I need to talk about it. And so I started doing the research and I started having conversations. And what was interesting is in those two things, I realized that stuckness was absolutely not a me thing. It was an innately human thing. Every single person that I spoke to and shared my experience mirrored that experience back to me and had their own story of when they felt stuck, whether in their career, their relationship, their personal growth journey, whatever it may be. Yeah. And so I just took a deep dive into it. Like I started having more conversations. I started doing more research. I started trying to understand like what is actually happening in the brain and the body when I'm feeling this kind of stuckness. And I just became a little bit of like a stuck nerd. But yeah, I just found the more that I talked about it, the more that I wanted to talk about it. And so a light bulb went off and I was like, this could be a really interesting thing to explore in a podcast. And that is how I got to where I am today.
Because I think that like stuck looks so different for so many people, which is like why I think sometimes like it can just look like just quitting a thing. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes it can look like just beating yourself up for something, or it can look like you just wandered away. I've been like just thinking a lot about like, do I get stuck? And I'm like, well, of course I get stuck, but like, how does it show up for me? I think often for me, like fear drives stuck. Mm-hmm. Like I'll decide I have no more choices, or my choices are limited, or like it has to be the way it is. And ultimately it takes me a really long time to understand that fear is in the driver's seat.
Stuckness is a step, right? It's like a stop on your journey. And it's not a very comfortable one, right?
Sure
it's
isn't.
Uncomfortable. It's scary. You feel a little bit lost. You feel a little unsure of what to do next. To your point, it can feel like there's really not any choices, or like you're in a box that you can't get out of. But I also think that it is an important step, because often it's the discomfort that drives the change, right? Yeah. It's the discomfort that ultimately kicks fear out of the driver's seat and is like, all right, you've had your turn. Like we have gotten to the point where we are so uncomfortable that we have to keep driving even if we're afraid. So you get in the back seat and we're going to keep moving forward.
Well, then that makes me think about like how you know when you're stuck. Mm-hmm. You know, like I think when I start saying things like, I don't know, who am I to do this thing? And like, this is probably not going to make it because I've been trying to do this for a very long time. And, you know, who the hell am I to try to do this? Like, and say this is going to work and make this big, like put a, flag in the sand. Like, I know that shows up for me when I'm like, I'm afraid to move forward.
Yeah, I think it can definitely manifest differently for different people. But the way that I describe stuck is it's the inertia that happens in between when like who you used to be and what you used to do like no longer feel like a fit. What you were doing no longer feels like what you want to do, or it's not successful anymore. You're not getting the same results. And so the things that you have been doing and the person that you have been up until this point, it's clear that like, okay, this isn't working anymore. But the person that you're going to be and the things that you're going to do and the success that you're going to have, like hasn't fully emerged yet, right? So like you can't go backwards because who you were doesn't fit anymore. But you can't go forward because you don't really know what that looks like yet. And so stuck is that in-between place, right? Where
oh my God, that's so true.
Yeah. We all go through this evolution in all areas of our life, like whether we're talking about career, relationship, personal growth, right? To use like the, vernacular of today, like we all have eras. We are all Taylor Swift, right? Like we all go through these different periods.
I thought you were going to say like Skibbity Riz toilet, to use the vernacular of today.
I cannot
Ohio.
I just like, I see this online. I'm like, do I even want to go down this rabbit hole? I don't think that I do. But yeah, so like we all have these like distinct periods. And sometimes when you're in it, you can't see that you're transitioning, right? Like in hindsight, when I look back, like I can see all of my distinct chapters and I can see the transition from one page to the next, right? But when you're in it, you don't always know that that's happening. So the experience is just like, oh, I'm getting so frustrated. Things don't feel right. I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied. What I'm doing doesn't feel like it's working anymore. But you haven't turned that page yet. You don't know what that next page looks like. So you're stuck there. And eventually that experience becomes so uncomfortable that even if you feel afraid or hesitant to let go of the previous version of you, the discomfort propels you forward. And it's like, okay, I don't want to be here anymore. So I'm going to do whatever I can do to figure out what comes next.
I'm putting it in my own experience only because this is like a really like almost new concept for me. But I would think the danger would be of going back because that's that comfortable old sweater that's dirty and smells and is really quite unflattering. But you wore it for so many years that it's just like, well, I know this sweater and I'm going to just put it on. And like, you know what? Fuck it. Makes me look dumpy, but I know it. So it's like, that's, I think sometimes like how I keep ending up in the same place and not getting into the new sweater that's cute and flattering and light and like maybe like doesn't stink any longer. I don't know why my sweater smells. I mean, I'm not dirty, you guys, I swear.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge that experience because we all do that. Even if we are actively taking steps towards getting unstuck, we all backslide, right? Change is hard. Change is scary. Like there are very few people and instances that just like snap their fingers and step into the next version of themselves in their lives. And
wouldn't that be nice?
Right. I wish we could like, apparate to use Harry Potter terms, like from this life to the next. Potter. So there is also this nervous system element, right? Like when you are stuck, like your nervous system is shut down. So like, it's hard to get motivated. It's hard to make those steps forward because you're just like kind of powered down a little bit when you're in that state. So
maybe a little disassociated, but all the things.
Exactly. And like, you just kind of want to not move,
just like sit on the couch and watch TV.
Exactly. And it's like your body's way of trying to protect you, right? Because like your brain is wired for safety and change feels scary and unfamiliar. So your brain can register that as a threat. But to use the sweater analogy, I think that a place where a lot of people get stuck is thinking that change has to be grand and like big and showy in order for it to make a difference. But really, the path to change is in each individual sweater stitch. So there is, there is a woman who I interviewed for the podcast. She's brilliant. She's a therapist. Her name is Britt Frank. And she wrote a book called The Science of Stuck. And it's all about like the actual like neuroscience and what's happening in your nervous system and evidence-based strategies for getting unstuck. And something that she talked about on my podcast that has, it like burrowed itself into my consciousness and is now a part of my everyday life. And I talk about it to the point where it's probably a little annoying to the people around me. But she has a concept that she calls micro yeses. So again, the individual sweater stitch, right? It's about figuring out what is the smallest thing that I can say yes to in this moment that will not overwhelm my nervous system and cause me to shut down or get overwhelmed, right? So it's not about going from A to Z. That's not how you get unstuck.
Yeah.
Getting unstuck is going from A to B or going from A to A and a half. Like, sometimes
8.5.
Exactly. Like it's such small incremental change. And like, depending on how stuck you are, that change could be, I'm laying down and I'm going to sit up and I'm going to straighten my back. Right. And then it's like, okay, I'm sitting up. The next step is I'm going to stand up and like stretch my arms. And they seem micro, but it's the micro that adds up to the macro. So that is
so true.
It is. And it's a way to change that doesn't overwhelm the nervous system, right? Because let's talk about it through the lens of New Year's resolutions, since a lot of people are experiencing this right now. When we make a million resolutions and we try to change everything at once, I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to work out every day. I am going to journal.
I'm going to be the best version of myself.
I'm going to do all of the things, right? Like we
Talk about a recipe for disaster.
Yes, we become so overwhelmed because it's not like you go to sleep on December 31st and you wake up on January 1st as a new person with a new nervous system, right? And so when change is big, when we try to do everything at once, it overwhelms us and we shut down. And that's why we often abandon those resolutions or commitments. But taking the micro route and just doing these small little changes one at a time and allowing them to build up, they build momentum. And then you're able to say yes to bigger things. And then you're able to do like more grand gestures of change. It becomes like a snowball effect. So if and when you're stuck, it's about starting small and building up to the big.
Yeah. You know what? I had just like, as you were talking, I had like 47, like, it reminds me of this. It reminds me of that. But it like,
tell me.
Two really big ones that remind me of. One, like women who've had babies who like want to be thin or who've put weight on. Like I have food issues. And the second I get my food in order and like I'm, in meetings and I want to sort my shit out, I'm like, well, I want the weight off tomorrow. And it's like, I put it on over 9 months. It might take 9 months for it to come off. So that level of like patience. But then I was also thinking about like, if you start doing something like, I don't know how often anybody's digging a hole, but you're digging a hole with a shovel, like, then it's like, oh God. But then one shovelful at a time, before you know it, you have the big hole. Can you tell I'm watching Dexter with my son? I'm literally using an analogy of preparing to bury a body.
What an amazing show.
But anyway, I'm just thinking of like, it's that I know I get overwhelmed as soon as I go, when I think about like I have this new business that I'm trying to spin up. And as soon as I start to think about I would need a staff and how would I pay them and how's that then I shut down immediately. And so I just am always thinking, and I do say this to my kids a lot. It's like, in spite of being scared, I have to just take that next step, whatever that is, in spite of being scared. But I'm still scared to frigging death.
Well, and also if thinking of all of that scares you, right? Like if you're like, oh, I have to hire a staff, I have to do the paperwork, I have to do this. If that's overwhelming, like getting really granular, like, okay, so eventually I have to hire a staff. So maybe today I make a list of the positions that I might want to hire for and like sit with that and see how that feels. The example that I often use, so the most stuck that I have ever been in my life was I used to have a drinking problem. So I drank problematically from the time I was 19 until I was 25. And it made my entire life stuck. And I stopped drinking when I was 25. It's been 15 years since I've had a drink.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But when I first stopped drinking, when I would think about everything that needed to happen. So there was this idea that I had that when I stopped drinking, everything would be great. My life would be fixed, right? Drinking was the problem. And once I stopped drinking, then everything would be fine. And to your point, that's not the case, right? All of the other stuff is still there. You're just in a more sober position to deal with it. And so if I would think about, well, I have to get a job. I have to get a car. I have to fix all the damage. I need to fix my relationships, make amends. Like, whenever I would think about all of those things, I would get so overwhelmed, I would start to panic or I would literally go to sleep, one or the other. Yeah. It was like
I love a good like sleep coma just because you're so stressed out.
Yes, it was one of those two extremes. And so I had to learn in my early days of not drinking to not be like, oh, I have to get a job. I have to fix this relationship. I need to get a car, so on and so forth. But be like, okay, today I'm going to set an alarm and I'm going to get out of bed when that alarm goes off.
Yeah.
Today I am going to choose to eat something healthy for lunch, a salad instead of a burger. And it was over time, those small changes that allowed me to get the job, get the car, fix the relationships, make my amends. It was all of those small things that snowballed over time that led to me getting unstuck. But if I tried to focus on the big picture from the get-go, like I said, panic attack or coma, one or the other.
I guess I think, like, if I'm stuck in my question. I guess what I'm thinking about is like, these are deep ingrained habits or ways of being. Some of them handed to us by like family and the way that the family was, or dynamics and stuff. So it's like, is it just as simple as I just focus on the next right thing, the small thing? And like, how do you avoid that, like slipping into the, and I'm back over here.
God, I wish it was that simple, right? I wish anything in life was simple. I feel like there's really nothing that has that simplicity. There's always like these complex layers. And I think that, yes, to your point, I wish that it was that easy, but it's not. When you find yourself in a place of stuck, it took you a long time to get there. And there's a lot of different things at play that are causing that inertia, some of which are in your control, some of which are not so in your control. And getting through it is really, really hard. And I think for me, what has been really important is acknowledging that that's hard and giving myself compassion for doing a hard thing, right?
Yeah.
Because the second that I get caught up in the story of, I'm not doing it right, you're not doing it fast enough, oh, you took a step forward, but you took 2 steps back. As soon as that internal dialogue starts kicking in, I am spiraling back down into the stuckness.
That voice is so powerful in your head. My head, I should say.
Oh,
it's that negative track is just, it's so damaging.
Mm-hmm. And it can be really loud and really convincing.
Yeah.
And I think challenging those stories is a big part of getting and staying unstuck. Of like
some journaling, some like gratitude lists, some like saying the things that are actually working versus all the things. Like I was talking about my business with my friend last night out to dinner. And like, as I was starting to say all the things I was afraid of, I was talking myself out of it at the same time. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of personalities in my head right now. But I was so thrilled that the voice that was saying, well, Mom, you did do this on this project. And you have done this, and you have done like I'm so thankful when that voice shows up.
Yes, literally rewrite your stories, right? Because the more attention and power that you give to that voice, the voice that's like, actually, that's not true. We're actually amazing. And here's why. The louder that voice becomes, right? So it's anytime those stories come up, I'm a writer. That's like what I do for a living. I physically rewrite my stories. So if I find myself stuck in like an internal thought loop of like, you're not good enough, or you're not going to succeed, or, whatever the flavor of the week is in this brain of mine, I will write it down, and then I will literally physically write down all the reasons that it's not true. Right. So if
that's amazing.
Yeah. And there's something powerful about it. And it's not immediate. It's not like I write it and I immediately feel better. But over time, giving more agency to that voice that is really supportive and recognizes my success and believes in me, that starts to be louder internally. And so the other voice, of course, still comes up, but now there's something to combat it.
Well, okay. So speaking of that voice, let's take it back to like the New Year's resolutions or something that you came into 2025 being all hot about. Like, I want to do this. But like at some point, you're questioning, like, did I go too big? Did I take on too much? Is it okay to redefine? How do you know if that's just like a sneaky version of yourself being like, you're just quitting in a pretty package? Like, is it okay to quit?
I think it's totally fine to quit if that is actually what you want and what is like aligned with where you want to go, right? So I don't think because you say I'm going to do this thing, you have to do that thing, right? People change, circumstances change. You might have gone too big. Maybe your body isn't cooperating with something that you want to do and you're having pain, whatever the case may be. I don't think that you have to uphold every commitment that you make to yourself. But I think that that has to come from a place of like really intuitively and authentically believing that that goal or resolution is not right for you. Not because that voice inside is saying, you can't do this. Who are you to think that you can do this? You're going to fail. Like, you're not good enough. Like, you don't have the talent. If that is the voice that's driving the ship and causing you to quit, I will just speak for myself. When I have listened to that voice and allowed it to drive my behavior, I ended up with some regrets, right?
Yeah.
But when I have genuinely like tuned in to the authentic voice inside and heard that voice say, you know, we tried, but I don't think that this is right for us and it's okay to do something different, then that I feel like is totally fine. Yeah. What do you think? What is your experience?
I think I agree with you. I wholeheartedly. I remember like one year I just decided on a whim to watch the New York City Marathon and watch people come over the finish line. And I'm such a sports person. And so I get very taken with the victory and the, tears and the whole thing. And I was like, that's it. I'm signing up for the marathon for next year. I put my fucking name in the lottery. And let me just tell you something. I run when being chased. Even as an athlete, I run if I want to score, but it's like I played lacrosse in college. I'm the person that just hangs out by the net. I'm not playing the middle of the field of both sides. I don't have that stamina. I don't have that level, and I despise running. But I got really swept up in the moment, and I was just getting more and more and more nervous. And then the universe did me a solid, and I didn't get picked in the lottery. But it was the hugest learning for me because I was like, I realized that I was doing it to prove something. I was doing it because I thought I have to overcome this idea that I'm not a runner. And that was a very big opening for me to be like, not everything needs to be overcome. Like some things are a part of who you are. Like I'm more strength oriented, so I can lean into that. And it freed me up for those kinds of conversations to really, to look at it and go, why am I doing this? Am I doing it because my love or there's something really I want to get out of it? Or am I doing it because I'm afraid? And when I want to quit something, it's often I was doing it because I was afraid.
100%. And I think that, none of us can be everything. None of us can do everything, right? So it's okay to just be like, this thing isn't for me. I thought maybe for a minute that it might be for me, but now I feel pretty confident that I'm just going to go over here. And that's totally fine. And I also think we need to give ourselves permission to change. So like maybe last March, Robin was like genuinely excited about the marathon.
Sure was.
But then as Robin moved through the year and things changed and maybe you had life commitments come up and training didn't seem possible, like maybe
I
November.
actually looked at a training schedule and I was like, that's a lot more than I had thought.
Yeah. And so maybe August Robin or October Robin was like, ooh, this version of me is like not excited about this at all. And it's from my perspective, I have to allow myself that like permission to change. And like I can have one thought or one idea at one point and then that thought and idea can change and it's like okay to run with the new version of myself. I don't have to force myself to do things that past me was excited about.
Yeah. We talk a lot about, I have this thing called it's now called the Great You Plan, but it started the Great Robin Plan. And it started when I was in this like partnership that I wanted to wrap up. And I started this document where I started talking about my word for the year, my goals for the year, and then it's expanded over time. Like so, I go at the end of the year and I see what I achieved out of the goals. Like I have like a 5-year plan at the top, and then I have like what might be missing, what would I need in order to do this, and then I sort of like back out things like if I want to be here at year 5, I might need to be doing work on this year. But then I tend to do it. And then kind of like maybe I check in once throughout the year, but the writing of it puts it inside me somewhere, which is a very weird way to say, but I said it like that. And then at the end of the year, I go through and I evaluate what I achieved and what I didn't. And I see a lot of times things that I abandoned. And I'm like, I can see why I did abandon that. Like that seemed like a good idea at the top of the year, but then I moved in this other creative direction and that felt more right. And it has really freed me up. It's weird to do something that's so like defined and almost a little rigid. Like I'm putting percentages on things, but the rigidity in some weird way gives me more freedom.
Well, because it sounds like you have the rigidity. You created the system, which, by the way, my little type A heart is very interested in. This sounds amazing. So you created this system that allows you to be really, really clear about where you want to go and where you're headed, right? At the beginning of the year. But then you also allow that flexibility to change and to make decisions on the fly. And then when you review it and you can see where you shifted gears, that's just okay. And then you just use that to reevaluate for next year.
The Great You Plan, I think, started out of my belief in choosing a word for the year, what I want to live into. Because I feel like, you know how they always say if you're riding a bike and you see something in your pathway, they always say, don't look at that, look beyond it. Because if you look at the thing, you go into the hole or you hit the rock or whatever. And I don't know why that is. It's like some weird brain juking thing that happens. But I feel the same way about a resolution. Like I kind of feel like I want to just put my word of what I want to live into that's out there in the future. And I'm trying to get that. I'm trying to find that sweater. And I just put a whole lot of analogies in one thing there, but we're going to just run with it.
I love it.
But it's like, I like the declaration of something, you know, of like prosperity or, you know, inevitability. Like, so like I said, I had a dinner with a friend last night and I was like, what's your word for this year? And we were talking about it. And I was like, I had this image immediately of a bird. And I was like, my word is soar. I was like, oh, this year, I was like, I want to fucking soar. I want to fucking fly. So it's like, I really like the holistic idea of what do I want to live into?
I absolutely am obsessed with that word. What a beautiful word to like guide your 2025.
Right.
But I also like that because there is like a real power in intention setting, right? If you're like, this is my framework for the year, like subconsciously, even if you're not consciously thinking about it, right? If you have made that declaration of like, this is the year that I soar, that is going to drive your behaviors, your decision making, like the steps that you take, the places that you go. And it's like, that is going to be what enables you to soar.
Yeah. It's so funny because my wife, Mary, sent me this thing because we all just joined the gym to help my son kind of start to build a routine for the gym. And she sent me this, like, it was, of course, a TikTok, which is like, you just feel like, oh, you lost all credibility as soon as I said that. But we'll just ignore that portion. And it was this guy who was talking about, he was like, is the best way I can start my day to do 20 minutes of meditation and then like to sit and to journal and then to take a long walk and then get into some exercise and some cardio. It's like, that's 2.5 hours. He's like, but maybe, he's like, so you have your best, but then you also just have your like, what's the bare minimum? And he's like, and maybe it's just enough that for 60 seconds, I sit in my bed and I ground myself and I just kind of meditate, check in with myself, and I start my day. And I thought that was such a great thing. And it made me think about resolutions, because I often think people want to go from 0 to 1,000. So we did that for joining the gym. I said, my perfect is that I go 3 to 4 times a week. I said, but my bare minimum is if Sunday goes around, I come and I do that little 30-minute workout thing that they have just so I went. Or at the minimum, I take a walk. But like, there's something that happens, you know, if I haven't. And I don't know. I found something about that very comforting. Like, just giving yourself permission, I guess.
Yeah. So giving yourself permission, but also like failure is incredibly demotivating, right? Like if you set yourself up with goals that like are not the most realistic, chances are you're not going to attain those goals. And when you inevitably fall short of that perfect ideal, which, like, let's be real, we all do and we all will, then you get overwhelmed with those feelings of, I failed. And then it makes it harder to do anything
Here
at
I go
all.
again.
Exactly. And then you get stuck in the spiral and the stories, and then you're right back where you started. But like having that, okay, this is like my perfect, but like if I can't do the perfect, I'll just do this one thing. and then celebrate that thing when you do it, right? Like have that thing be like, oh, I did it. Like this is a success. That's what's going to continue to propel you forward. Like it's sustainable.
Celebration is tough, but I think it's important.
Yeah. And I also like around this time of year, obviously everyone's talking about goals and ways to get healthy and all of these things. And I feel like there's a lot of advice out there, right? Or like schools of thought where like, if you want to be efficient or healthy or successful, you need to do A, B, C, D, and E, right? And I just find that that's not like relevant to everyone. So like, for example, I know that everybody harps on the importance of having a morning routine, right? You have to, the way you start your day is the way you end your day. You got to get up, you got to meditate, work out, all these things in the morning, right? And for years, I pushed myself to do that, right? But like for a number of reasons, I'm just not a morning person. I have I have rheumatoid arthritis. I wake up and it like takes me a while to get going and get moving. And so I had to kind of be like, that might work for other people, but that doesn't work for me. I have to have a very leisurely morning and ease into the day. And then that sets me up to then do those other things later on in the day when I'm feeling more energetic, awake, like comfortable in my body. Yeah. Right. So I think it's also about figuring out what works for you and you specifically.
Yeah, that's really great. If you're talking to somebody right now, like who set some resolutions, maybe some of them were too big, maybe some whatever, or they're just plain stuck. What's your like, you got them by the shoulders and you're looking them in the eye and what are you saying to them right now?
You are human. Cut yourself a little bit of slack. Be kind to yourself. You're not going to shame yourself into change. So if you're beating yourself up, I should have done this, I didn't do that. Cut that narrative out to the extent that you can. Show yourself a little grace, show yourself a little compassion, and figure out, again, like you said, what's the bare minimum? What's the one thing that I can do? What's the like smallest success that I can set myself up for? And focus on doing that. And then just keep doing that. And those steps will add up and they will take you to where you want to go.
Well, what I want to say to you is that I am so glad that we did this. This was so fun. And I think we're both spreadsheet goal-oriented people. We could talk for 12 hours and I have loved this conversation. It's just so, the timeliness of it is absolutely perfect.
Honestly, Robin, this was the conversation that I needed today. It was so fun talking to you. I feel like, to your point, this is a conversation that is going to be really helpful right now specifically. So I'm just really grateful that we got the chance to sit down and talk. And again, I literally feel like I could talk to you for 700 years about this and everything.
Absolutely. And to that end, I want to say to all the well-adjusting listeners who are out there listening, I'm going to tell you that even though we're done making New Year's resolutions, you should set a new goal, which is to start listening to Season of Stuck with my pal Deanna, okay? Now, I would say that would be a new goal for me, but the show is already in my rotation, so get on it, folks.
And to all of my Season of Stuck listeners, you should absolutely go on over to Well Adjusting on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe. They dive into such amazing topics and they do it in a fun and funny and accessible way. And I can't recommend them enough. It's one of my favorite listens of the week.
Yeah, and everybody, thanks for joining us today. I mean, go get those goals, right?
You have got this.
Yes.
This episode was a collaboration between Edit Audio and Season of Stuck. It was edited by Maria Passingham. That's me.